And I'm starting to think that my grandma's in trouble.
Who's ready to celebrate?
I'm gonna make sure you don't go down.
To our future.
General Hospital.
In Port Charles, secrets have a way of breathing beneath the surface, quiet, patient, and dangerous. And right now, the air around Laura feels heavier than ever. For weeks, she sensed that invisible walls are closing in, tightening with every unexpected phone call, every shadowed glance, every carefully worded message that arrives without explanation. Laura is strong, everyone knows that, but even strength has limits when someone holds leverage that can shatter everything you love. Sidwell knows that. He's always known that. What began as a subtle pressure has grown into something darker, control wrapped in politeness, threats disguised as favors, demands delivered with a smile. Sidwell never raises his voice. He doesn't have to. His power lies in what he knows and what he's willing to reveal if Laura steps out of line. Information that could devastate reputations, fracture families, and rewrite the story of Port Charles in ways no one is prepared to face. But what Sidwell doesn't realize is that someone else has finally had enough. Lucas has been watching, quietly, carefully. Every uneasy exchange, every moment Laura forced to smile while her eyes carried worry she tried to hide. Lucas has always had a protective heart, but this time it's different. This time it's personal, because he's seen how Laura shoulders burdens alone, how she refuses to drag others into danger, even when she's drowning under it herself. And Lucas can't accept that anymore. The realization hits him like lightning. Sidwell's power isn't infinite. It rests on something tangible, evidence, proof, the blackmail material that gives Sidwell his hold. Destroy that, and the entire structure collapses. But getting to it won't be simple. Sidwell doesn't leave loose ends. He trusts very few people, and the few he does trust are bound by loyalty or fear. That's where Marco comes in. Marco isn't a villain. He's a survivor, a man who learned early that aligning with powerful people keeps you safe. Working for Sidwell has always meant stability, security, and turning a blind eye to things better left unseen. Marco tells himself he's just an assistant, just a facilitator, just a man doing a job. But lately, those justifications have started to feel thin, because Marco has seen Laura too. He's seen the way she speaks to people, with warmth, with respect, with sincerity that feels almost foreign in Sidwell's world of calculated moves. He's seen how her presence changes a room, softening it, humanizing it, and he's noticed something else. Sidwell doesn't see Laura as a person, only as leverage. That difference matters more than Marco wants to admit. So when Lucas approaches him, the conversation is nothing like Marco expects. Lucas doesn't threaten. He doesn't bargain with money or promises. Instead, he speaks with a quiet urgency that feels disarming. He tells Marco he knows Sidwell is using Laura. He tells him no one deserves to live under that kind of shadow. And then he says the words that shift everything. Help me end it. Marco's first instinct is fear. Sidwell's reach is long, and betrayal isn't forgiven. But Lucas doesn't push. He simply lays out the truth. As long as the blackmail exists, Laura will never be free. And as long as people like Marco keep enabling it, Sidwell will keep winning. It's not accusation, it's reality. And Marco feels it land. There's a long silence between them, one of those rare moments where choices hang visible in the air. Marco can walk away, pretend this conversation never happened, continue the life he knows, or he can step into uncertainty and do something right. For the first time in years, Marco chooses risk over safety. The plan that follows is delicate and dangerous in equal measure. Sidwell stores his most sensitive material in multiple forms: digital files, physical backups, hidden redundancies meant to survive any single breach. He's paranoid enough to expect betrayal, but arrogant enough to believe he controls the people around him. That arrogance becomes his weakness. Marco knows the systems, the access points, the rhythms of Sidwell's schedule, the moments when rooms are empty and guards distracted. Lucas doesn't need every detail. He only needs Marco's willingness, and once that willingness is given, the path begins to open. Their alliance, unlikely as it is, carries an undercurrent of tension and unexpected humor. Lucas, driven and intense, keeps expecting Marco to retreat. Marco, dry and self-aware, keeps pointing out the absurdity of two men conspiring like characters in a spy film, all for the sake of a woman who has no idea what's unfolding on her behalf. "Do you always do this?" Marco asks once, half amused. "Launch covert operations to rescue people who never asked to be rescued?" Lucas's answer is simple. She wouldn't ask. That lands, too. Meanwhile, Laura senses change before she sees it. Sidwell's demeanor has shifted, still polite, still composed, but edged with something sharper. Impatience. He presses harder, reminding her in subtle ways of what he holds, of what could happen if she defies him. Laura meets his gaze with quiet dignity, but inside, the strain grows. She hates the secrecy, hates the feeling of being maneuvered, hates that her silence protects others while trapping herself. What she doesn't know is that her silence has inspired loyalty she never requested. The night when everything moves into place arrives almost quietly. Sidwell, confident in his control, attends a function that keeps him occupied and visible. Marco ensures the office systems cycle into maintenance mode. Security protocols relax just enough to allow entry without raising alarms. Lucas steps into a world he's never inhabited before, Sidwell's inner domain. It's colder than he expected, clinical, ordered, a place where people are reduced to data points and leverage files. He feels anger rise, sharp and protective. Laura deserves better than being reduced to a folder in someone's vault. Marco guides him with efficiency born from familiarity, but there's tension beneath it. Every second inside is borrowed time. They reach the storage hub, physical drives, encrypted archives, redundant backups, the heart of Sidwell's power. Marco hesitates only once. This ends everything. For him, for me. Lucas meets his eyes. It begins something better. And that's enough.
The destruction isn't dramatic. No explosions, no alarms, just systematic erasure. Files overwritten, drives wiped, physical copies reduced to fragments that can never be reconstructed. Years of collected secrets dissolving into nothing. Sidwell's leverage collapsing in silence. When it's done, the room feels strangely lighter, as if a pressure has lifted from the air itself. Marco exhales a laugh he didn't know he was holding. "You realize," he says, "this is the worst career decision I've ever made." Lucas smiles faintly. Or the best. They leave without trace. By morning, Sidwell will discover what's gone. By then, it will be irreversible. Laura learns the truth in pieces. First, Sidwell's sudden fury, barely contained, his usual composure fractured. He confronts her with accusations, thinly veiled as questions, but there's something missing from his stance now. Certainty, authority, the invisible chain he once held is gone. Laura feels it immediately, the shift, the absence of pressure she'd grown used to. It's like stepping into sunlight after months indoors. And then Lucas appears. He doesn't boast, doesn't dramatize. He simply tells her that Sidwell has nothing left, that whatever threat once bound her is gone, that she's free. For a moment, Laura can't speak. The weight she carried alone has vanished so suddenly it leaves her unsteady. When she finally looks at Lucas, her eyes are bright with emotion she rarely shows. "You did this," she whispers. Lucas shakes his head gently. "You deserved it." It's not romance in the conventional sense, not declarations or grand gestures. It's deeper, the intimacy of someone seeing your burden and choosing to lift it without being asked. Laura understands that kind of love, the quiet, steadfast kind, and her gratitude carries warmth that lingers between them long after words end. Marco watches from a distance later, unseen, as Laura laughs freely in a way he's never heard before. The sound surprises him. He realizes he's smiling too. Risk, it turns out, has its own reward. Sidwell, meanwhile, faces a reality he never anticipated. Power without proof is nothing. His threats ring hollow, his influence fractures, and for the first time, he's the one on unstable ground. The loss of control gnaws at him, not just because of what's gone, but because he doesn't know who dismantled him. That uncertainty becomes its own prison. Port Charles shifts with the change. Laura moves through it lighter, unburdened. Lucas stands closer now, not as a savior, but as someone who chose courage when it mattered. And Marco, once defined by survival, begins discovering what it means to stand on the side of something better. In a town built on secrets, one truth has quietly triumphed. Leverage can be destroyed, fear can be ended, and sometimes freedom arrives not with noise, but with the steady determination of people who refuse to let darkness win. If you believe heroes don't always wear capes and that the bravest acts are often the quietest, stay tuned, because in Port Charles, the aftermath of freedom can be just as explosive as the chains that once held it. The days that follow feel almost unreal to Laura. Freedom, she's learning, isn't just the absence of fear, it's the slow return of breath you didn't realize you'd been holding. She walks through Port Charles with a lighter step, noticing small things again. The way morning light settles on the harbor, the hum of conversation at the cafe, the warmth in familiar greetings that no longer feel like performances hiding anxiety. But freedom also brings questions. Because Laura knows Sidwell, a man who built his world on control doesn't simply accept loss and move on. He regroups, recalculates, strikes from angles no one expects. And while his leverage is gone, his pride is not. Lucas senses that tension too. The relief of what they accomplished hasn't erased the danger, it's only shifted it. He finds himself watching corners, scanning faces in crowds, listening for the subtle signs of retaliation. Not out of paranoia, but instinct. Protecting Laura no longer means destroying evidence. Now it means staying ahead of whatever comes next. And despite the seriousness of that vigilance, something softer has begun to grow between them. It starts in quiet ways, shared glances that linger half a second too long, conversations that drift from practical updates into memories and laughter. Laura teasing Lucas about his newfound talent for covert operations. Lucas insisting Marco deserves most of the credit. Laura replying with a knowing smile that courage doesn't transfer, it belongs to the one who chooses it. Their connection carries warmth edged with humor. Laura, who spent weeks weighed down by secrecy, now finds herself laughing more easily, often at Lucas's expense. He, in turn, discovers that beneath her dignified strength is a playful spark that surfaces when she feels safe. One afternoon, by the waterfront, she nudges him lightly and says, "You realize you've ruined my reputation." Lucas blinks. "By removing blackmail?" "Yes," she says, perfectly serious. "Now everyone will think I need rescuing." He grins. "You didn't need it." She meets his eyes. "But you gave it anyway." The moment holds there, soft, charged, unspoken, not romance declared, but indelibly present, something mutual, growing, unhurried. Marco watches this evolution with quiet satisfaction and mild disbelief. He never expected to become the accomplice in a story that feels suspiciously like redemption. His life, once defined by step-siding consequences, now includes something unfamiliar, pride. Still, he doesn't underestimate Sidwell, and he's right not to. Sidwell's reaction when he finally confirms the totality of his loss is not explosive rage, it's worse, controlled fury, the kind that freezes rather than burns. He reviews security logs, access trails, personnel movements, finding nothing conclusive. The absence of answers infuriates him more than the destruction itself.
Because someone didn't just defy him, someone outmaneuvered him, and Sidwell cannot tolerate that. His attention turns inevitably toward Laura, not because he believes she orchestrated it. He knows her methods, her ethics, but because removing leverage restores her agency, and an empowered Laura is dangerous in ways he'd dismissed before. She has influence, loyalty, and now motivation. So Sidwell shifts tactics. Without blackmail, he must rely on perception, subtle insinuations, whispered doubts, the slow erosion of reputation that doesn't require proof, only suggestion. If he can't control Laura directly, he can destabilize the ground beneath her. The first signs reach her through others, odd questions, cautious tones, conversations that falter when she enters. Laura recognizes the pattern instantly. Sidwell is trying to isolate her, turn trust into uncertainty. This time, though, she isn't alone in facing it. Lucas refuses to let her retreat into solitary endurance again. He counters rumors openly, defending her integrity with calm conviction. Marco, from quieter channels, intercepts misinformation before it spreads. Allies Laura didn't know she had step forward, not because they're asked, but because they choose to. And Laura herself does something Sidwell never expected. She confronts the whispers head-on. At a public gathering where Sidwell's influence still lingers, she addresses the room with composed clarity. She doesn't mention blackmail, doesn't expose secrets. Instead, she speaks about truth, resilience, and the dangers of manipulation disguised as authority. Her words are measured, dignified, impossible to challenge without revealing the challenger's own motives. It's masterful. By the time she finishes, the narrative Sidwell tried to seed has withered. Doubt shifts away from her and toward the unseen hand that tried to create it. Sidwell watches from the edge of the room, expression carved from stone. He understands what just happened. Laura didn't just escape his control. She neutralized his replacement strategy. In public, elegantly. For the first time, he feels something unfamiliar around her. Respect. It does not soften him, but it alters the game. Meanwhile, Lucas and Laura's bond continues to deepen in ways neither rushes to define. They find themselves drawn together not by crisis anymore, but by choice. Walks that stretch into evening, conversations about futures rather than dangers, the comfort of presence without urgency. One night on the docks, Laura leans against the railing, watching reflected lights tremble on the water. "You changed something fundamental," she tells him quietly. Lucas shakes his head. "You did. I just helped." She turns toward him. "No, you did. You saw me trapped and refused to accept it. Do you know how rare that is?" He hesitates. "Anyone would have." Laura smiles softly. "Not anyone. You." The space between them narrows, not dramatically, but inevitably. When their hands brush, neither pulls away. The contact feels natural, earned through shared risk and trust. They stand like that, side by side, looking outward and inward at the same time. Marco, ever observant, later remarks dryly, "If this turns into a love story, I expect partial credit." Lucas laughs. "You erased files." Marco shrugs. "I erased obstacles. Very different." Even Laura, hearing this, can't suppress amused agreement. But beneath the warmth, currents still move. Sidwell is quiet, not defeated. A strategist deprived of weapons doesn't stop being dangerous. He studies, waits, rebuilds influence in new forms. His conflict with Laura has shifted from coercion to contest, and contests can last longer. Yet something irreversibly changed. Laura no longer fears him, and fear was his greatest tool. As weeks pass, Port Charles settles into a new equilibrium. Sidwell's aura of untouchable power has cracked. Marco's quiet realignment opens doors to a different future. Lucas and Laura move closer towards something neither names yet, but both feel. Freedom, once granted, reshapes everything around it. One evening, as laughter drifts across the harbor and the town glows with familiar life, Laura reflects on how close she came to losing herself inside someone else's control. She glances at Lucas beside her, steady, unassuming, extraordinary in ways he never claims, and feels gratitude deepen into affection that promises more. "Strange," she murmurs. "What is?" he asks. "How the worst chapter can lead to the best turn." Lucas considers that, then smiles. Only if someone decides to turn the page. She meets his eyes. "You did." He answers gently. "We did." And in that shared acknowledgement lies the true continuation of their story. Not the fall of Sidwell's leverage, but the rise of something stronger. Trust chosen, freedom defended, and connection built not on rescue, but on standing together when it matters most. Because in Port Charles, power may shift and schemes may rise again, but some victories endure. And the quiet courage that freed Laura has begun shaping a future none of